Good evening, everybody. Back with another episode tonight. Just got done playing some hockey and took a shower and am feeling wide awake. So usually on nights that I play, I can't fall asleep until like 1 a.m. So tonight I figure I would jump on and go through the next installment of our Python series. I've been looking forward to doing a bit more of that. And if you'll recall, we had our first episode last week, I want to say, where we're going through the Python Koans. So if you're unaware of what the Koans are or how to set things up, how to get Python running on your computer, just go back to that first episode and we kind of walk through all that there. And we made it through the first handful of Koans. So the remainder of the videos, I think we're just going to churn through and talk about what we're seeing and complete them and hopefully get to the end at some point. All right, so first things first, I need to go to my home directory. So I'm just kind of like getting reset. And in my home directory, there is a directory called programming. So I'm going to cd into that and use ls to see what's in there. All right, and then all we need to do really, let's see, we'll go into Python Koans master, which is also a folder, and look at what's in there. All right, so if you'll recall last time, we just need to run the contemplate koans.py file, and that will effectively show us where exactly we are at in our journey. All right, so I'm going to say Python 3, and then I will tab complete contemplate koans.py and click enter to let that run. All right, so again, we are in a file or in a challenge called thinking about asserts. One has failed. We have not yet reached enlightenment. Test assert equality has damaged your karma. False is not true. Okay, so please meditate on the following code. So it gives us a location to look for in that file. And we've completed 3 Koans out of 37 lessons, so 0%. You are now 301 Koans and 37 lessons away from reaching enlightenment. So simple is better than complex. All right, so first things first. Actually, let me make this a bit larger just to make sure everybody can see it. And then I will go over to Sublime Text, and I'm going to just open up this whole folder structure. All right, and now here we are in Sublime. So we need to go into the Koans, and what do the errors say? Asserts about asserts.py. So in Sublime, I can just go Command T and search for files, and you can see that it starts to do a fuzzy search, and you'll get your choice pretty immediately. So about asserts.py. All right, I'm going to jump back to the terminal and see where it said to look. So file blah 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 Koans about asserts.py. Okay, that's where we are. Line 37 in test assert equality. So scroll to line 37, which is right here. All right, now, as we said last time, these are just all tests. And this is kind of a large exercise in test-driven development to learn how to write Python, right, and read and interpret Python. But you kind of get 2 for the price of 1 because you are learning what is known as TDD, which is a very common practice when developing software. Write a series of tests that define the behavior of your program, and because the program doesn't exist, those tests fail, and as you implement your program, the tests begin to pass, and when the tests are all passing, that tells you, okay, the program is behaving the way it is defined to behave by the tests. So that's the little TDD explanation. All right, so test assert equality. Here we are in this test. To understand reality, we must compare our expectations against reality. I like these because there's always these little philosophical statements like that. To understand reality, we must compare our expectations against reality. So the expected value is something blank. The actual value, a variable here, which is set to the value of 1 plus 1. All right, so that's 2, okay. And then we're going to say self, assert true. And then there's, in these, as an argument, is passed expected value double equals actual value. All right, and so the double equals here is a way to basically say they are equivalent. Clearly, that means what that means. So with a variable, if you use a single equals, you're doing assignment, where you are assigning a value to a stand-in name, let's say, for simplicity, a stand-in name for that value. And if you're using a double equals, this is a comparison operator. And it's a comparison that says, I expect the value on the left to equal the value on the right. Okay, so what's happening here? It's kind of a nested thing. So we have a function on this, a class function that's called assert true. And so it's going to say the two things, or whatever is happening inside my parentheses, it should result in true. And if it doesn't, I'll fail. Okay, so right now, expected value is 2 underscores. And actual value is the integer 2. And so expected value and actual value are not the same. Therefore, this comparison resolves to false. And therefore, because what that resolution is not true, this function is going to throw an error. And how do we prevent that? And that's the error that we just saw a second ago. All right, so the error was assertion error. False is not true. All right, so that thing in there resolved to false, because 2 underscores does not equal 2. And we need to fix that. So we could just say 1 plus 1 here. We could modify expected value to equal actual value. And I think that would work. So let's jump back over to the terminal and run this again and see if we make it to the next one. And we did. All right. So we're in a we're in a different context now. We're operating, our error is coming from a different line of the file. So we know that it passed. And of course, you can see that it's green here, which means that it's passing. We can do other things though. We don't have to just stop there. So we could say 2, and I would expect that to pass. And it does. All right. And we could actually set it to really anything we want, as long as the values are equal. That should pass. And it does. One thing I would expect not to pass is when we compare the integer 4 to the float 4.0. Decimals in programming are referred to as floats. I think that's a valid statement. I think that's a true statement. And they are 2 different data types. And so I'm curious if this will actually fail. I would expect it to. No, it has not. So this operator, the double equals, sees a float and an integer and does not say that they are unequal. So there might be a separate operator in Python that we haven't encountered yet that actually will throw an error in the case when you're comparing one data type to the next. So that's interesting. And that's why I like to mess with these as we go along, because you learn stuff like that. Another thing to point out too is that there will be times when we're going to, let me just open up a new window in my terminal and then just type Python 3. And if you went through the first video and you installed Python on your path, you should be able to just do this, and if you spell it right, you should get like an interpreter, a Python interpreter. There's another word for this. The Ruby, what's it called in Ruby? IRB. So it's like an interactive Ruby, what's the B stand for? I don't remember. But this is like just a place where you can run Python code, type in different things that you're interested in, and experiment a little in just like an easy environment. And so I'm curious if we say 4 equals, just like in that test, 4.0, will this return true? Yeah, that's just crazy to me, actually. I was not expecting that. So there we go. I learned something in this very first test about Python. All right, so moving on. Test a better way of asserting equality. Some ways of asserting equality are better than others. I bet we are literally going to see what we just talked about here. Okay, so let's do, again, expected value, let's say 2. All right, and it looks like this assert equals is going to take 2 values and assert that they are equal. So let's see what that happens with that. Need to go back over here. And that passed. All right, great. I am curious, does 2.0 assert equal 1 plus 1? Again, with the float scenario. And it does. So there we go. All right, moving on. So we'll just make this 1.1 plus 1 to match the other value. All right, moving on. Test that unitest asserts work the same way as Python asserts. Test that unit test asserts work the same way as Python asserts. All right, understand what lies within. This throws an assertion error exception. All right, so what is the error that we got? So let me run this again. Okay, so assertion error. You have not reached enlightenment. Please meditate on the following code. Blah, 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 about asserts.py, line 54, assert false, assertion error. All right, so I'm assuming that I just need to assert true. And will that pass? It does. So I guess what this is just showing us is that you can write your assertions in simpler form, you know, in fewer characters, and just say, okay, I assert, and then make sure whatever resolves, you know, whatever the argument is that you pass to assert, it resolves to true. Maybe. All right, last one for this file. Test that sometimes we need to know the class type. Okay, what is in a class name? Sometimes we will ask you what the class type of an object is. For example, contemplate the text string novel. What is its class type? The Koans runner will include this feedback for this cone. Assertion error, fill me in, does not equal type string, str. So novel.class is equal to type string. No, not quite. This is just what it displays. The answer is simply str. All right, it's str, so self assert equal str and then novel.class. So what is novel's class? It's a string. Anything in quotes, typically like this, is a string. It's string, not type string. Okay, fine. Need an illustration? More reading can be found here. Python Koans wiki class attribute. Do we want to look at that? I think it's pretty straightforward. So, all right, let's try this. Let's go back to our interpreter and mess around with this class function. All right, so if I take whatever, ASDF, and I call the __ class method on it, it returns a class of string. Now if I take 1 and I press dot and I do __ class, this is going to tell me what data type 1 is. And it is not. Invalid decimal literal. Okay, so how to, maybe I need to escape this dot. How do I call? All right, so then this is something where we're gonna learn something. How to call underscore underscore class on an integer in Python. Oh, integer like object, like they can have a class. You can access the class of an integer using the class attribute. Here's how you can do it. Oh, that's kind of lame, but can you really not call it directly on the integer? Because this is AI saying you should save it into a variable, blah, blah, blah. All right, so let's see this. We'll say num equals 5, num dot underscore underscore class underscore underscore, and that's an integer. Okay, so we saved the integer 5 just to a variable, and then we called the class method on that, and it returns the class of the thing stored in the variable. All right, so that's kind of interesting. What else? So we did num. All right, let's do, wonder if I can do, if I do like 5.0 and then I call class on this parentheses, that works. Okay, so I think this might be called casting. But anyway, we can wrap something in parentheses and then call a class on it, and we get the class of the thing inside the parentheses, which is a float. That's a decimal. Remember, we talked about that a bit. And just to remind myself, I think this needs to probably be a little bit bigger. Sorry about that. Some other data types. We did integer, we did string, we did float. Let's do like an empty list or array. Both terms are seemingly interchangeable. In Ruby, I would call it an array. I guess in Python, it's called a list. All right, and I wonder if there's like the curly bracket thing in Python. If this is a hash, it's a dictionary. Okay, so we have lists, we have dictionaries, we have floats, we have integers, and we have strings. And those are a handful of basic data types in Python. We have objects that can be complex and have all kinds of different implementation of different custom things, but within the language itself there are built-in data types that, a few of which are listed here. All right, so what this thing is saying is that instead of writing this whole thing out, this class dict response, we can just say str, and let's run it. Can't see down there why. All right. Contemplate Koans. Something has damaged my karma. All right, and now we are in Koans about strings. All right, so we have made it to a new file. We have contemplated 7 Koans. We are 2% of them, or 1 out of 37 lessons. All right, so that's great. Let's go to the next one, about strings.py. So I'm going to do Command T and look for about underscore strings. And we are just in the very beginning. So same thing. Let's take a look where our first error is originating, and that's line 10. All right, here we are on line 10. So in this test, we are going to test double quoted strings are strings. All right, and so we have a string variable saved to the string hello world, which is very common to write in your first ever program. So maybe we'll do that at some point. All right, and then we're saying assert equal. So assert equal, the thing on the left should equal the thing on the right. All right, and so the thing on the right, clearly the thing on the left is something we need to fill in. The thing on the right is something that says is instance, and it takes two arguments, string and str. All right, so what this I think is saying is like, is the first thing you give me of the class described by the second thing you gave me? So is the value stored in the variable string of the string class? And because that value stored in the variable string is wrapped in quotes like this, it shows up green in my IDE, those are all indicators that yes, this is a string. Some text in quotes is the marker for a string. So because of the way this sounds to me, is instance, typically methods that compare things and have like a question composition or a question sort of name, they will return Booleans. They will return either true or false, typically. So I think the way this whole nested thing is going to work is instance is going to return true if the thing on the left is of class thing on the right. And therefore, we want to make sure two things are equal, and that's going to be the result of this whole second argument, which I think should be true, and the first argument, which I've just placed as true to make the comparison equal. Let's see if that worked. And it did. All right, so take a moment to understand what we did there. Assert equal says the thing on the left needs to be equal to the thing on the right, or else I will throw an error. And the thing on the right is a thing that says, is the first item you gave me of type the second item you gave me? And if that is the case, the thing on the right returns true. And if it's not the case, it returns false. All right. And so to make them equal, I filled in true. All right. Do a couple more here. Test single quoted strings are also strings. Same thing, literally the same exact thing. All this is illustrating is that a single quote around your text still creates an object of class, an instance of class string. All right, so we've got the string variable again, set to the goodbye world string using only single quotes. We're going to assert equal something and the result of is instance string string. So is this thing also a string? And I believe the answer is yes. So I'm going to say true and then run the test. All right, that worked. All right, next up, line 18. Test that triple quote strings are also strings. Wow, 3 quotes. All right, same exact thing. So you can put 3 quotes around your string, and I'm going to assume, again, it's also a string. It is. All right, line 22. Test that triple single quotes work too. Wow, that's crazy. All right, so we've got, instead of triple double quotes, we've got triple single quotes. All right, and so again, I expect the same thing, that this is also a string, so this thing is going to evaluate to true when passed to is instance. All right, and that is the case. Next, line 26. Test that raw strings are also strings. Raw strings, I've never heard of this concept. So we've got string equals R, konnichiwa world, so some kind of R operator before a regular old string. And that's apparently called a raw string. I don't know what that does or what it is. Now, is it an instance of string? And it sounds like it is. Let me cancel that real quick. And let's run the test just to confirm. All right, and it is. So that R raw string concept, that is also a string. I don't know how it differentiates from string behavior though. All right, test that using single quotes to create string with double quotes. All right, so this is a little bit different. So we set string to he said go away. And then we've got two things we want to assert equal. So the string is just he said go away. And so this first item is going to need to also equal he said go away. Test to use single quotes to create string with double quotes. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with this. Let me just run it, and what does it say? What's the error? Assertion error. Fill me in does not equal he said go away. Fill me in should equal he said go away. Okay. I don't really know what the point of that is, but all right. So I'm just going to fill it in with he said go away, and then they're going to be equal. All right. And what am I supposed to get out of that? Like if I take the single quote away, it doesn't work. That's not valid. This will throw an error. Yeah, so that doesn't even really run. Compile. I don't think that's the right term. All right, so that was kind of weird. Next one. Test use double quotes to create strings with single quotes. All right, so you can use double quotes to enclose strings that have single quotes in them. All right, so again, this is going to be similar. Get rid of that, just drop that in, and I would expect it to pass. Yes. All right, and let's see here. Test use backslash for escaping quotes in strings. So use backslash. All right, so within a string. So remember, the string has to be surrounded by either single quotes or double quotes or triple quotes or whatever. And now let's say you've got quotes within that because you're, like you said here, he said, quote, don't. And now you want that to be of data type string, so you have to wrap it in quotes. Well, if you didn't have these slashes, the first, the quotes within the string would break your string and you'd end up with two strings, or you'd end up with an error or something. So you need to escape those. And that tells the interpreter, that tells Python, don't consider these to be characters that delimit the string, all right? Don't interpret them that way. And so that's called escaping. And you use a backslash character to escape characters that you don't want Python to interpret as like programmatic indicators or operators. All right, so B, A is something, he said don't. And B is also he said don't, but with single quotes. And we are, depending on what we use on the outer string, a single quote or a double quote, we need to escape any instance of those in the inner string. So notice that, in the second option here, because it's a single quote string, the only character that needs to be escaped is the one single quote. But for the double quote string, the characters that need to be escaped are the two double quotes inside, but not the single quote. So it just depends on what you've wrapped it in. All right, so assert equal. So A equals B. Now remember, the double equals in this case here is a comparison. So the result of this little, phrase here is going to be a true or a false. Well, does A equal B? Because we know that double and single quotes are equivalent when delimiting strings, I'm going to assume the answer is true. And therefore, to make the whole thing assert equal, we need the first argument to also evaluate to true, and we could just put the Boolean true there, and let's see what it does. All right, so I think that passed. Now we're down to line 44. Maybe I'll try to get through the rest of this file, and then I'll call it a night. All right, so test use backslash at the end of a line to continue on to the next line. All right, so we've got a string variable defined, and its value is a string, and it's a famous quote. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And now what we've got on the end here is a new line character that allows us to drop to the line below and continue the string without closing the quote right at the end here. All right, so it allows us to like drop, create a new line. All right, so the assert equals is the first thing needs to equal whatever len string evaluates to. Now, len is short for length, and it wants to know, I think it returns the number of characters in the string. Let me run it. I'm curious what the error is. All right, so we can see from the error, assertion error, fill me in does not equal 52. So 52 seems to be the answer, but what it's illustrating is that the length of the string is this length plus this length. It's not just this length. It's all one string. And I'm curious if it includes the new line character or not. Probably does. I would assume it does. All right, moving on. Test that triple quoted strings can span lines. All right, so here you can do triple quote and then go line by line and do whatever you want, and you don't have to put all of this stuff in quotes. All right, and then end that whole sequence with a triple quote, and everything in there is a string. All right, and that's set to a variable called string in this case. And again, we're asserting what's the length of this whole sequence. Let's see if I can get it just by counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think that is going to be the case. Let's see. And let me just run it and see if I pass. Line 51. Nope, 15. So 3 extra characters in there. Now, maybe because new lines, I'm not really sure where they come from, but that's all right. Good. Okay, so test triple quoted strings need less escaping. So if you've got a single quote string or a double quoted string, you got to escape all the double quotes inside. If you do triple quoting around the string, you don't have to escape anything on the inside. All right, so that's cool. Assert equal. Now, does A equal B in this case? And we believe the answer is yes. So we're going to say assert equal true. All right, and run them. Looks good. We passed. Now we're down to line 60. Test escaping quotes at the end of triple quoted string. Okay, test escaping quotes at the end of triple quoted string. All right, so we got triple quote string, and we are escaping a quote at the end and then doing 3 more quotes. All right, so there's 4 quotes right there. So that makes sense. All right, so then assert equal, I just think it's hello. Let's try to write it a different way. So hello world. And then we need another quote. All right, and now we need to escape that one and this one. All right, and so I think those should be equivalent. Hello world, hello world. Let's try that. All right, line 64. Okay, so that worked. Pretty sweet. Test plus concatenates strings. All right, so concatenate is an important term to know, and that just means like it merges them together, adds them together. So we've got a string variable, and its value is a string hello, and then some plus operator, and then a string world. And now what this seems to imply is that that plus operator is going to merge those to become one string. So we're going to test that theory, and we will just write it out as though it was one string, hello world, all surrounded in quotes. Okay, did the plus operator merge those into a single string is the question, and the answer is yes, because now we are down to line 68, so we know that one passed. Test adjacent strings are concatenated automatically. Okay, now this is kind of interesting. So we've got a variable string set to the string hello, and then a space, and then the string comma plus a space, and then a space, and then the string world. And apparently these three will just automatically get concatenated. That's kind of crazy. I've never seen that in Ruby. So that's interesting. So I assume then this is going to result in hello, comma, space, world, double quote. All right, so let's see if those are equal and the concatenation occurred automatically. It looks like it did. All right, line 74, we're making it. Test plus will not modify original strings. All right, so we've got a variable with a value of hello. We've got a variable there with a value of world. We've got a variable string with a value of hi plus there. So assert equal. What do we think hi is equal to right now? Well, this says test plus will not modify the original string. So I think that hi, its value that for comparison will be hello space. And there, I assume, will evaluate to world still, because its original value does not get modified by the concatenation occurring with the plus operator. All right, so let's run that and just confirm. All right, we're down to 81. All right, so that passed as well. Test plus equals will append to the end of string. Okay, so we've got a variable named hi set to a value of hello plus a string. We've got a variable called there set to a value of string world. All right, hello world. And now we're saying variable hi, whatever your value is, plus equal variable there. And what that's saying is like it's appending. It's like take whatever hi evaluates to, which in this case is the string hello, and then take whatever there evaluates to and attach it to the end of whatever hi evaluated to. All right, so again, I think this will modify the value of hi. So we were saying hi starts out as hello, and then hi gets a value appended to it, and therefore its value is a new thing that it started with. Let's confirm that. So instead of hi just equaling hello like it does here on line 78, I think it's now a different value, hello world, because of the append operator. I think you might call it that. Let's confirm. Sweet, on to line 88. Test plus equals also leaves original string unmodified. Okay, so original equals hello. Hi equals original. There equals world. Hi plus equals, so append there to hi. So hi now equals hello world. But this is showing that because you did the appending here, it does not change the value of the original variable. So let's confirm that. So if original has never changed and it still retains its original value and wasn't altered by the appending that occurred on line 87, we would expect this assertion to compare, in order to compare two things that are, that result to equal or that are equal, the first thing needs to be this string hello, comma, space, and we'll see if that matches what the data stored in original still equals. All right, that was kind of wordy, but hopefully you can follow along, kind of like what I'm thinking about there. All right, and then finally, test most strings interpret escape characters. All right, so string, and then there is set to a value which is a string, wrapped around an escape character. All right. So what do we want to assert is equal? So we're saying that string equals a single quote around that thing, a triple quote around that thing. So the special character or the escape character can be wrapped in, like all other strings, single quotes, double quotes, triple quotes. And now what are we saying? The equivalent of the length of the string. Okay, so the equivalent, or the equal, assert equal. What do we believe the length of the string to be such that this assertion can evaluate to true and not throw an error? I think maybe 1 is the length of, like, that's 1 character, but I could be wrong. Maybe it's 2. No, it was 1. Okay, so despite the fact that this is a slash and an N, most strings interpret escape characters. Okay, fine, but it doesn't include it in its length, which is interesting. So if I just do 2 here, I should have that error. So 2 does not equal 1. All right, so just for reference, the length of this string right here is 1, not typically, if it was 2 characters, you'd have 2. All right, so I think I learned, like, I don't know, a handful of things there. Very interesting. There's definitely differences between Python and Ruby. That's very apparent, even just working with some of the strings in this file. So very interesting. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks again to everyone who has subscribed and has been following along, and I hope to be back with a lot more on a more regular cadence. I got back from vacation and finally settled back in. So hope everyone has a good night. Talk to you all later.